Good afternoon, and welcome to the Alfred University Bergren Forum. My name is John D'Angelo, and I am a professor of chemistry and the host for the fall 2024 season of the Bergren Forum. Today is Thursday, September 19th, 2024. And for those of you attending the forum online, here in Western New York, it is a gray, overcast, but mild day, but inside Nevins Theater of the Powell Campus Center, it is comfy and cozy, and the coffee and tea are hot and free. Before starting, we have a few announcements. First, next Thursday's forum will be given by Ayush Sengupta, Associate Professor of Analytics at Alfred University. Ayush's talk will be on the societal impacts of ride sharing through gig economy employment. There are some other events this week to announce, namely tomorrow, September 20th, is the last day to withdraw from a course, cancel, pass, fail, select, or cancel an audit for an A block course. Students may be interested in that. The Department of Theater invites all students to an open call audition for Sophie Treadwell's play, Mackinac. There is a documentary screening later today at 5 p.m. in Holmes Auditorium of Harder Hall about printmaking in Oaxaca. Ali Brunel's Out of In With exhibit will open today in the Robert C. Turner Gallery at 6 p.m. Ceramics, paintings, and prints will all be available for purchase. And finally, admissions is hiring student ambassadors. Students interested should contact Deanna Spencer at spencerd@alfred.edu. Without further ado, today's forum will be given by Chase Angier, Alfred University Professor of Dance, who will talk to us today about adventures in the creative practice.
Thank you. John. Thank you. Can you all hear me? The mic is working. Okay. So before I begin, I'm just going to let you know I'm going to use a new technological tool. We'll see if it works. Photoshop, just doing it by itself. If it's a disaster, it's because it's my first time. So there we go. We'll see. We're and hello, everybody in the Zoom land. Okay, I'm screen sharing. Yep. And then I want to stop the screen sharing. And then I want to share again. And then I'm going to go to this. And I'm going to share that. I hope this all gets recorded too, because it's really fascinating. Okay, Sharit, thank you for helping me with this. We'll see how it goes. If it goes wrong, you're still fine. Okay, so to begin with, I would like to thank the following people and institutions for their support. We need to change those lights, please, to what we had practiced. Thank you. I want to thank Alfred University, Dean Lake and Provost Doby for the sabbatical and for their understanding of the importance of sabbatical in higher education. The International Fellowship for Faculty Development Grants, the Faculty Development Travel Funds from the Dean's Office, and the Bernsteins for the Bernstein Grant. Thank you to the 4 residencies who accepted me into their programs and supported my work: the Cité International des Arts in Paris, France, Stoveworks in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Bunnell Street Art Center in Alaska, Homer, Alaska, and Tom Letzi and James Leprod with the Berkshire Hills Residency for Interdisciplinary Creative Research. Thank you to the following institutions for my gigs as a resident artist, curator, speaker, or teacher, or juror, and that would be Kenyon College, Washington University, University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, Portland State University, Homer High School, the Prague Quadrennial in the Czech Republic, and the Fisher Art Museum in Los Angeles. Thank you to the Dance Force for partnership, the Dance Force in partnership with the New York Council for the Arts and their 2 years of grants supporting Letter to the World 7, which will be premiering in Buffalo this summer, and you will see pictures of that project coming up. I also want to thank all my friends and all the people who helped me along the way this year with rides, rooms, food, company, drinks, fish, yoga, artwork, teachings, airplane miles, and artistic support. Hopefully I got everybody, but hopefully I did. It was an amazing year. I was on sabbatical for 1 year, and I am grateful to all of you that helped. I'm grateful for all of you for being here today. I'm grateful to myself also for the research that worked out for this past year. What I've learned this year is how much I don't know and how hungry I am to learn and experience as much as I can in places that I'm curious about. So when I write a mission statement, it boils down to this. My personal mission is to connect people, places, and ideas through art, education, and conversation. My sabbatical was set up to explore both urban and natural environments through attraction walking, which I'll talk about in a second, through collecting images, sounds, and ideas, and then editing and distilling that collection down. Then from that potent distillation, I would then create something, whether it be curriculum, whether it be art, whether it be dance, all while reflecting on the connections between what I created and my own intuition at this particular time in this particular space. Paris and Alaska, and all of that is connected to walking. Paris and Alaska were my original chosen places for this research, and 3 months of residency was split up between Paris and Alaska. I intentionally and intensely worked this past year to absorb as much as I could at the tempo of 3 miles an hour, which is the average pace for walking. And I embodied places, metropolitan places like Paris, but also Prague, Los Angeles, New York City, Nashville, Montgomery, Alabama, Chattanooga, and Philadelphia. On the flip side, I was equally interested in exploring remote landscapes like my time in Homer, Alaska. I walked 6 to 8 hours a day or 6 to 10 miles every day, collecting images, sounds, embodied experiences, and impressions. Because today's talk is so short, so I've experienced a lot in a whole year, and I'm going to put it down to this like 25-minute talk. I've narrowed it down to talking about something that I'm currently learning. So something that I'm not an expert at, and something that's my new love. And I ask students all the time to share their beginnings with me, so I'm doing the same today. My usual area of expertise is as a choreographer, exploring 3-dimensional live art with bodies and movement in space, often in alternative sites. What I'm showing you today is my experimentation of working in 2 dimensions instead of 3, and this time with the absence of bodies. This new exploration was inspired by my beginning summer printmaking class with William Contino, Don Weinhardt, Ellie Gamble, Phoebe, and Walt. And it's been life-changing. Usually, going back to the choreography, when I am looking for a site to do a site-responsive performance, which is a performance inspired by and created for a particular site, like maybe a rooftop or an old Elks Club, I have to deeply research the sites before I create the choreography. I walk, observe, sense, write. I take inventory, photos, sound recordings, and I improvise in the space. I'm using many of those same skills to collect images, but then using them for both inspiration for new choreography and for new prints. So that's the new part for me. So what I'm going to tell you about is I'm going to show you a fraction of the images that will be continually rolling while I talk. And all of them are created by me, and most of them are manipulated either through small shifts or by using Photoshops or by creating a layered image. These are all organized into places that I've been. So going back to walking, my walk, what I call attraction walks, are designed by my sensory responses to my present environment, creating choices in direction, which then creates a route as I go along. I pay attention to what I'm drawn to in that moment, which makes me pause, stop, turn around, change directions at this specific time. So what is there that's catching my attention today? Do I hear something that I'm attracted to? In this moment, do I feel like walking into open spaces Or does my mood or instinct sort of draw me into like a dark alley or a small space? In order to do this authentically, I need to be alone. I need to be present. I need to be prepared physically. And I need to be attentive in a responsive way, not ever looking for anything specific, but just being open and porous so that my inner landscapes and my inner intuition and my outer landscapes can be in conversation. Each day was radically different depending on what was being presented in my environment and how I felt. Yes, and I'm talking about feelings in academia. Do you hear that, Justin? Wherever you are, feelings. Feelings! In Paris, everything was new to me. Everything was love at first sight. I remember saying every morning when I would wake up, I'd be like, I'm in Paris, I'm in Paris. I mean, literally saying that out loud. And for my attraction walks, I was attracted to everything. I was attracted to the fashion, the people, the architectures, the view, the food, the road signs, the gardens, and of course, the abundance of incredible art. I walked from morning till night, stopping along the way, of course, to buy bread and cheese and wine and rotisserie chicken. And I don't know what it is they do in France to that rotisserie chicken, but it is amazing. All while being drawn into beauty, creativity, and humanity. When I walked without a destination, I was never lost, as I didn't have a specific place I needed to reach. I didn't need to use maps. Instead, I created indirect, original routes and afterwards looked at maps to see where I had gone. Curiosity was my guide. When you walk this way, you also familiarize yourself in a different way with your surroundings that then stays with your memory. So I might be walking and go, oh, there's the horse statue that's close to the Louis Vuitton store that's, 15 minutes away from the Louvre. And then if I go the other direction, I go to that big obelisk, which is by where I bought a Lebanese sandwich, which is by the opera, that kind of thing. But you find little things like the cat statue in the window, like little teeny details, not just sort of the giant monuments that France has many of. And those details are a lot of the things that really caught my attention. Of course, there were days that I wanted to go to a specific festival or a museum or a rehearsal, and I would plan my walk. But after I attended that particular place, I would then use my sensations or intuition to find my way back. And I knew I only had 2 months, so I didn't sleep much on purpose. I slowed my pace. And I did pause, and I really tried to be French. This French woman told me that I had to learn to sleep in a park, and I tried that. I wasn't very successful at that, but I laid down for a long time. I lengthened my duration of time being spent out. Walking along the Seine till midnight every night was like a free outdoor club with people, music, lights, dances, bridges, etc. And all my walks were alone. They had to be in order to do this type of walking, but they also gave me the opportunity to meet people spontaneously. I don't speak French, but I did make many French friends from the neighborhood and artist friends from around the globe who were at the residency. Within the first hour of being in Paris, I went to get a cup of coffee. I started talking to this woman who was sitting next to me, and it turned out that she's a choreographer. So within half hour, I met a choreographer. And within 2 days, I was in the woods watching her aerial dance company rehearse in the trees outside of Paris. On my way back from that rehearsal, I found a carnival that was empty because it was raining, and it was an incredible place to collect sounds and images that I later made into layered prints. Talking with people in cafes, parks, lines, museums, on the street, hearing their stories and perspectives, well, it was everything. It was heartwarming, it was challenging, it was devastating, it was the entire gambit. And I learned a lot because I had an abundance of time in which to walk in an unfamiliar space. I made connections that resulted in books that are now in the school's library, connections to artists that may come here as a guest artist. I took dance classes, went to dance rehearsals of choreographers I met. I created a new course that I'll be teaching in Paris through the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga as a prototype with the plans of bringing AU students the following summer. I researched work in many museums, failed at taking the naps in the park, though I tried, went to a gajillion openings and created these prints when I returned to William Contino's printmaking class. These things also, exploring printmaking, and I'm a beginner, also gives me insight as we are building a new BFA in performing arts that's interdisciplinary. So it does address inclusion, mentorship, and intersectionality. During my residency in Stoveworks, Tennessee, I also walked 5 to 6 miles every day using the same sort of methods to explore Chattanooga. I lived in an old stove factory with 9 other artists, and they were all in their late 20s. The residency, I was definitely the only parent. The residency was extraordinary because I had time and space to explore and create new work all day. I had a bedroom with a separate art studio, and my friend and colleague Angie gave me a 24-inch printer to use. So this way I could walk, collect the images, edit the collections, work on those few that I chose, decide how I'm going to print them, and then hang them on the wall. Once they're on the wall, then I actually had the time to sit and look and go, oh, that's not working, or that's working, and sort of reflect on the work that I was making. And I made a lot of mistakes, but it was great because I actually had the time to make the mistakes because I've never had access to a printer for this long of a time. I created over 40 prints, and I also learned screen printing, which was super fun. And I tried again this summer. I was terrible at it, but I love it anyway, and I'm going to keep trying. And I tried the letterpress, which I fell in love with. It was eye-opening to what my students, many of you, and my colleagues here at AU are doing, and gave me a new appreciation and understanding when I see print work out in the world. And then it makes me excited about that documentaries tonight and the print show that's happening in the Fosdick. I wrote something in my handwriting. I have no idea what it says, but that's okay. While I was at the residency, I also created and performed a dance using elements of the Stovework Courtyard as a score, and collaborated with Nina Wang, a visual artist and DJ, one of the Gen Zers I was living with. This was an unexpected surprise to find a collaborator, and happened organically because we had the time and the space for these unexpected connections. I had a lovely combination of time alone, time with a resident artist, and time with my inspiring friend, teacher, and colleague, Angie 5 of my prints were then chosen to be in the Stoveworks annual fundraising exhibition titled Red Dot, which was my first time. So that was super exciting for me. I was like, how do you sign it? Do you sign on the back? Do you sign on the front? It was fun. So in Alaska, so I'm now going to go to Alaska, I used the same walking methods. I also took yoga classes, wilderness classes, sound design workshops, a music composition workshop. I taught workshops in sight work, sight choreography and movement to the community, and I taught a class at the high school. I had intense conversations with artists, fisher people, Alaskans, Alaskan transplant, and overall Alaskan badasses. I loved Alaska and Alaskans, and I can't wait to talk to Nicole right there, who just spent a lot of time in Alaska with Frederick Brodry. The people that I met there had this amazing combination of individuality and privacy. They were like these loners, very highly capable, but also being committed to their neighbors and to the community. And they were really great about working as a collective. It was all at this residency that I had my most time alone, walking for miles on the beaches with bald eagles and other animals and not seeing any people. I planned my walks around the tides. They had these Midas tides that went out for like a mile, and you'll see some pictures of them. And the schedule around the moon and the sun, not in some sort of hippie way, but it actually affected the tides and when I would get up and when I'd go to sleep and things like that. I just wanted to be awake for as much as I could while I was in Alaska. It was here that I watched the waves for hours and did not think that the waves had to have a message or a meaning for me, that they were just simply waves, and that was enough. It was here where I knew that I was nature and was not separate from nature. This embodied understanding was freeing and beautiful. In Alaska, I could hear my inner voice, as human and flawed as it is. And isn't this what we're asking of our students? To find their inner voice so that they can show up, create, lead, so that they can learn. It is when we find our inner voice that we can find authentically to make original work, to connect to people without using words. We as faculty are always trying to make that time and space for the students, for their learning, for their research, for our research together with the students, for our curriculum and for our program development. This learning, teaching, and research are at the center, the heart of education, and that learning requires all of us, students, teachers, administrations, all of our systems to work together to create that fertile space of time and space for learning. How does my experience lead back to you? To Alfred students, faculty, and community members? My courses will be refined as I understand firsthand again about beginner's mind, as I'm learning how to mix inks for the first time, use Photoshop, learning how to build a fire without paper or matches, which I did. It's for you, Nicole. Just want you to feel proud of me. It took me a couple times, but I did it. I learned about 5 different kinds of salmon. I learned to meet people with different mindsets. The sabbatical, with its open time, allowed for opportunities to learn, to make, to adapt to a variety of living situations and places, and to practice courage being in a place where I didn't speak the language or know anyone. To practice problem solving as problematic situations came up. I had time on my sabbatical to ask questions, to meet many people from all over the world, and to find myself in unusual situations. Like when I was improvising, I would improvise in the woods, and then I turned around and there was this giant moose, and I was like, okay, it's a duet, So that, I had never danced with a moose. In fact, I had never been close to a moose without a fence. So that was really exciting. Or to have dinner with new friends from Uganda, and the next day, one of those people that I had dinner with in the night defected from the country that we were in. We were in the Czech Republic because he was gay and didn't want to go back to Uganda. I learned about art, music, science, French history, which is important by itself, but it also makes me understand the context in which ballet formed. Or I saw the stages and went backstage to see where my favorite company, the Ballet Russe, in the early 1900s, where they walked and where they were on stage. I saw Marc Chagall murals, this means murals on a ceiling, in the Paris Opera. I mean, it was truly amazing. So instead of just seeing them on pictures, I got to see them in person. I had plenty of opportunities to learn here also in the United States, having residency in Tennessee, Buffalo, Alaska, and the Berkshires, giving artist talks at the Fisher Museum in Los Angeles and in universities like Ohio, Oregon, and Washington, exposed me to very different cultures, ideas, people, and art. Los Angeles, Chattanooga, very different. Alaska, Berkshires, very different. I lived with you Gen Zers for a month, and that was a cultural experience. I knew very little about Alaska before I went. I just knew that I wanted to go there because in 2011, I flew over Alaska in the day, saw that landscape, and knew I was going to go back there. Learning about their culture, history, artwork, industries was fascinating. And I will go back. The investment by Alfred University and everyone I mentioned earlier in my research has already been integrated into my courses and my artwork. This weekend, I'm taking my students in my walking class. I forced them to be here. I'm taking them to the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood in Buffalo to be a part of the research being used to create Letter to the World 7, a project happening in the summer created by myself, Marketa Fantova, and Evelyn LeBlanc-Roberge, all people originally from Alfred. This is a 12-year project that started here in Alfred and has been performed all over the place, including Cardiff, Wales, and Prague this past summer. And now it'll be in Buffalo. So our Alfred students have been performers in these works, and now they're going to be embodied researchers as well. Time and space allowed me to explore, experiment, connect. It helped me with my mission of connecting people, place, and ideas through art, education, and conversation. Thank you to AU for believing in the necessity of sabbaticals and research, and to everyone that helped make this a remarkable year. And thank you to the opportunity to share my beginnings with you in the two-dimensional world. I would love any constructive feedback you have on the images, if you have them, not right now, not publicly, but if you would like to. These are just going to be some bloopers, like regular pictures. Not public feedback, but if you want to talk to me or email me, I would love your feedback. Thank you very much. So now we can turn on lights. And I wrote this down because Emrys told me that you always have to write down your talks, and put it on this loop because I really wanted to get as much information as I could to you, because what I'm really interested in, Dawn, you came. Dawn's my teacher. I really wanted to have a conversation with any questions that you may have about anything that I talked about today.
Questions for Chase, and we'll ask that you use the microphone so it can get out onto Zoom.
Yes.
So when you take your photographs, do you use your phone? Do you have a fancy camera?
I do not have a fancy camera. I have my
Okay,
phone.
cool.
And what's nice about that, well, one, I don't know how to use a fancy camera, but two, it didn't sort of like separate me from people. I could be kind of discreet about it. I mean, not always, but could be. Yes, Sharit.
Did you ever experience a level of imposter syndrome while you were traveling / creating?
I mean, imposter, like as an artist? Or, I mean, I wasn't showing. Oh, yes, I did. I know what I did. So, when I did the Fisher Museum, my work was in an exhibition called Scene Shift, which is at the Fisher Museum. And it is part of Maureen Weiss's. So some of you might have taken her class. She used to work here. And Sybil Wickensteimer's exhibition that they had in Los Angeles. And it was this really beautiful exhibition that was connected to this book. And I'm from Los Angeles. So having to give a talk at USC, first of all, it's USC and I went to UCLA, so just getting on to that property was a little difficult. But yeah, that was intimidating. And my mother was there, and some of the people that I'm collaborating with were there that I don't know that well, but I highly respect. So, and because I'm a choreographer that works with designers, and the whole exhibition was about designs, but our designs were in the exhibition, that was one that I was, nervous about and felt like, do I deserve to be here and stuff, but it went okay. I think a lot of it was because, I think the answer to that too is when I stop making it about myself and I focus on the artwork, that I'm fine. It's when you're like thinking about your own identity, that's for me, that's when I get wigged out. But once I just let it not be about me and let it be about the work, and the work that I created were with these great collaborators, so it's our work, then I settle down. And then my mother kept asking questions, and then it just got crazy. Yes,
I want to ask about the walking
yes,
because I have just learned to walk.
yeah.
That might be a surprise to some people, but I
You did the Camino.
did the Camino, and I learned that we can really only do life at 3 miles an hour.
Yeah,
And so I've really been thinking about this, and I am very curious about the inner and the outer. The what like for example, I spend a lot of time on my catio getting to know the trees in my neighbor's yard,
yeah,
and they're my friends. And then I noticed that there was a bug crawling on the floor, and I was slowed down enough to take note of life around me. And so, if we are to do life at 3 miles an hour, to take in all that there is to take in, how do we put the devices down long enough to create? Or maybe for you that you need the device, but
but
how
not,
do we
not on all of them.
how do we
And-
build in the framework of time?
So that's what my walking class is. Raise your hand if you're in my walking class. Bunch of you, that is what we're doing in the walking class. Walking without other people, walking without the phone, we walked on a farm yesterday. We're walking in Alfred. We're walking in an urban place on Saturday. So I think part of it is we're going to have to walk more soon anyway, because fossil fuels are leaving us and things like that. But I think that COVID helped with that. But for me, that's what I was saying, that it's all about figuring out what is your inner landscape with the outer landscape, and when do you pause and when do you walk slowly. And it's different because I lived a long time in New York, and this and being late. And now I'm here in Alaska and I'm walking like this. And then I'm like dancing on the beach and, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It takes time and space. How do we give ourselves that time and space to have that experience? And you had that with the Camino because you were there for a long period of time, walking that huge long pilgrimage. Yeah. Time. Yes, Jesse. Am I supposed to pick on them? I'm picking on you.
That was a fabulous talk. Thank you. Very moving. I was wondering, you obviously had some goals in mind throughout the sabbatical, but it also seems like it was balanced with, let's see what happens.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the dichotomy of that and how you connect that in a way that feels productive?
So what I did was I came out of, academia and art is tricky, right? And academia and walking is radical, or walking in this way can be radical. So academia does have a lot of like, what are your objectives and your goals and how are you going to get there and blah, blah, blah. For me, I did the opposite. It was about not having goals, but creating the situations in which things could happen. So part of it is about getting the funding. I'm running to Lauren, I'm applying for every grant that I can get to have the funding to do that. Part of it is me researching all of those residencies and going, I really want to go to Alaska. Which residencies are Alaska? I got into this Alaska residency, but I had been talking to them for 3 years. So like these things take time. So it's about setting yourself up to have those sort of open experiences. In my classroom is framed by an hour and 15 minutes. But then what is the time that I give within that time for open exploration? Jonathan's not here today for my gestures. Yes, Robin. Robin, you've got a microphone.
I got a sense from your black and whites that there is the sense of being invisible. And you're a dancer, so a choreographer, so you do work with people, and you said that at the beginning. I was just wondering about, did you ever feel lonely, frightened? Because there's such an absence in your black and whites that make me anxious.
Interesting. I did not ever feel lonely, but in terms of like fright, like, you know, I could go to a restaurant, eat food by myself. But in Paris, which has lots of tourists, I'm not going to go to a bar by myself. Many of you might. That isn't my jam. I would go to a cafe by myself. You know, I might go to have a glass of wine and dinner, but I'm not going to go to a bar. But I didn't have to, because I could walk on the Seine the whole time. So I sort of avoided being frightened by walking with lots of people at that time. But I think because I was like, time was my friend, like the city was my friend. And I met so many great people. I don't know if you know this about me, but I don't have trouble talking. So I'm like, blah, 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 you know, so I met lots and lots of people. And this one woman, she owned a cafe. She was an Algerian. She didn't speak any any English. I didn't speak any French or any Algerian, but we loved each other. We saw each other every day. And I would say, "You're my best friend." And she would be like, "Yeah." Blah, blah, blah. And we would like hug, and she'd give me something. And then one time I was at a restaurant, a different restaurant, and she went up to the waiter. She was walking home and went up to the waiter and paid for my dinner. And another time I would like bring her a bottle of wine, and she got me this coffee cup, and we didn't speak anything to each other, but we could just tell by our energy that we were best friends. And I still keep in touch with her, you know, sending emojis, you know, like the pictures. Yes.
If I need it, I talk so loudly.
Yeah.
Where you literally completely forgot yourself. You couldn't take a picture. You couldn't.
Oh, yeah.
It was well beyond anything. And then you get back and that image comes. It's not in a camera. It's not anywhere, but it's so solid.
That's why most of the pictures that I had in Homer, I mean, that was the most beautiful place. I put a few landscapes in just for you guys so that you could see the bigness. But for the most part, I didn't take pictures because there's no way to capture even a fraction of the beauty of the large landscape in Alaska, unless you're a really good photographer with a really good camera, of which, yeah, and I'm not those, yeah, but I am interested as I embody landscapes, how that's going to come out in my work coming up. Yes. Yep.
So you've had a year without the structure of work, and now you're back with us. What are the techniques? What are the methods? What are your goals now in terms of how you spend your time? Because I know how busy you are and all the things put upon you within. And so how are you approaching that?
That's a good question. I do daily meditation. I am not a fancy meditator, but I've been doing it for like 4 years now on my little app. But I find that helps me in the morning to like not charge into the day, but to settle my body into the day. I need to spend more time with my physical self, which I haven't been doing. My dog is back, so I'm walking at least 2 hours a day with my dog. And then, but I feel like as we build programs, I am trying to champion that idea of time for student research and for faculty research and for student and faculty research. Like, what can we take away, or what can we make more efficient so that we have that really generative time? And I don't have all the answers, but I look forward to working with colleagues like you, Zach, to figure that out, and with administration and with students. Mike.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who've lived in Alaska for a long time and have worked in the fishing industry and all sorts of things. I was wondering, did you feel safe going for long walks on your own? Because everybody I know who lived in Alaska carries a big knife and a gun everywhere they
Yeah,
go.
I felt absolutely safe. The only time that I got really like was things that had to do with traveling, like when you have to get to a plane and that plane has to get to another plane and you have to get to a bus and you have to get to like that stuff makes me super anxious, I will say.
What about wild critters like a moose?
Yeah, you know what? That was kind of, I mean, I was with other Alaskans, which helped me to figure out how to navigate that landscape. I didn't that's why I took the wilderness class. I took a wilderness survival class before I went to Alaska. And then I showed up with all this stuff. I had this like little blanket that's this big and a whistle. And I had a ferro rod that I then didn't take on the plane because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get flagged because I've got fire making things, but I tried to educate myself and I read books. But I mostly because I talked to people. But the town that I was in, Homer, Alaska, is not any more dangerous than this town. And yes, people here carry guns and knives. People there carry guns and knives. Are we timed?
May have time for one more. It's 12:55. Back behind you.
Ooh, Ben.
So you talked a lot about exploring this practice of printmaking and gathering images.
Yeah.
Is this sort of living in as a separate side from choreography of dance, or do you think that these images that you're gathering and creating could sort of like a dance could be formed from that sort of in an ekphrastic form, like based on the image that you've created?
I could do that. I also could create costumes. I could create projections. But I think what it does more for me is gives me a break from choreography. Where choreography, I'm expected to do, and I just needed a break from that and a break from a lot of things. So then I just tried something new that nobody expected me to be good at. I don't expect myself to be good at. And then I just fell in love with it. So with that, will this feed into my choreography? It already has. I created a solo for a woman at the University of Washington, and I was really interested in ghost prints. And so we started making phrases, like movement phrases, and then having somebody else make sort of a ghost print of that phrase and all the way down. And so it absolutely swims back and forth, which is why I'm so excited about Alfred. I'm going to end it on a big Alfred Up with People because it's small, because we can organically and naturally create those kind of intersections across the campus, but we do need that time and we need that space. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you all. See you next week.